Now that the path of the dragon is known and explored, let's look at the offspring of the dragon, which is an even trickier, more intricate path. The path of the crow, the journey of the raven to the black sun, the sphere of the clip off known as Arab Zarak. And the reason why I'm saying child of the dragon being the crow is because I want to connect Bruce Lee's Game of Death with the crow. Both father and son, being Bruce and Brandon Lee, both died on the set from a firearm that was supposed to have a blank in it. So the lesson about mortality when it comes to these two sons being the inner and outer sun, the yellow and the black, remember? This is a very real portrayal of what goes on in a person's life, which is considered a magician. On the right-hand path, this whole symbology would have been represented by a dove in the baptism of Jesus, the land known as Nexit. But on the other side of things, which is how the movie The Crow takes place, he's basically in hell, the character Brandon Lee in this movie, because he dies. But he's more in a fourth dimensional level where he can still reach out and touch his enemies. And his spirit is synced up with the crow, with a crow. Interestingly enough, in the storyline, both he and his fiance are killed, and he's basically just comes back to get revenge on his attackers. So that's really basically the premise. But then the intricacies of how this plot is laid out in this movie shows you the direct path of what's going on and where we are as a blueprint in this time of human history. So these two movies jump right off the page. You transition right from Game of Death to a man who represented the dragon who died on set from a firearm to his son who also dies on set from a firearm in this movie called The Crow. So the son of the dragon is the crow. After you master the wisdom of the serpent, the highest form of it, the dragon, you learn the scales, the connectivity with the people. Now, this spirit, now you have to animate this dragon. Now you have to show this dragon where to go. And this is introduced in the path of the crow. So you have the late great Brandon Lee, who expresses himself so poetically, and he plays the guitar because this realm that is also known as Arab Zarak is the sphere of the artist. This is where artistry takes place. So you have this song type of thing. You have this montage-like energy, although they never really get into montages per se. But this is like a darker version of Gotham. This world is cloaked in what is called the impure Venus, which is the goddess of perversions. So you have this turned up to the max in the villains in this movie. The antagonists are full of the impure Venus. That's what they represent. And this place being dark represents what is called the Sea of Nightmares that the artist goes through in the sphere of Arab Zarak. This is what your spirit as a crow has to journey through in order to reach your highest self. Remember, this is all about personal empowerment. I don't want you to feel like overly mystified by these details. Okay? So this is what's happening. You're really flying to the black sun. The black sun is basically you're on your journey to go within. And all of the traumas that you experience and all of the hardships in life, these are materials for your art, materials for your songs, material for your sculptures, material for your paintings, all of your real nightmares and your bad experiences. The combination of these are the building blocks. There's nothing tasty about the building blocks to a building. You're not going to eat the cement. You're not going to eat the brick, the wood, you're not going to eat the tiles, the shingles, but the building goes up and it keeps you safe. But none of these building blocks, in this sense, you understand, are necessarily edible. These are just things you have to put around you as you travel. This is like a Merkaba reinforcement. like plugging it up to the charger and bringing it up to 100%. This path and transition from the dragon to the crow, you understand? So this crow is dealing with the world of death. Brandon Lee, remember, he's expressing himself poetically. He's the artist. Everything, he's talking in riddles and doing all kind of things. You know, he's attacking these guys, and according to their weapons, the guy with the knives, he killed them with his own knives, etc. Interesting names too. You had one called Fun Boy, who represented the mischievous spirit of Hippocrates, the mischievous child, right? When you dig into the Osirian mysteries. And then you had one Tintin, which can really represent the Tin Man on the yellow brick road. You know, whatever he needed, whatever he had. But either way, this guy was working with blades, just like the Tin Man's original mythology was that he worked with an axe. He was really an axeman. So the knives and the axe, and that's Tin Man. And then you had, I think the one guy's name was Top Dollar. So at the end of this, what are artists usually controlled by when they go corporate? Top Dollar. For Top Dollar, what happens? Souls get sold, right? Allegedly. All of this is going on in the realm of Arab Zarak, so it jumps right off the pages, and it jumps right out of the sacred text, and it jumps right off of the movie screen, all at the same time on one screen. You see it? You're Brandon Lee. If you're an artist and the world and life seem to have gotten in the way of that particular dream, that was your fiance. Life and the things that you go through that will push you away from your original dream, your original immaculate concept, that'll push you out of your dragon, try to reverse you and revert you from a dragon back to a serpent. This is where you're going to marshal all of your forces to rise up and to be able to fly within. But you have to fly up and out of a very murky and very dark and violent place in this sea of nightmares that takes place in the subconscious, which is what is also called the heart. You understand? You're flying up out of that, and you're getting revenge against all of the things that held you back. All of your doubts, all of your fears represent these particular characters in the story of your life. Whatever blocked you from your dreams. These are particular enemies that you are in the in-between to slay, because you're in between where you are now and where you want to be. So look at these things like realms. In the moment we stopped pursuing and stopped going after our true purpose, right in that moment, both us and our fiance were slain, and we were brought into the underworld with the song, but also with the spirit of the artist, because in this realm, you're reborn as your own child. That's why Brandon Lee's character was intentionally childish. Hollywood understands what all of this is about. This goes into deep mythologies. So this is what this movie is painting out, giving you a format, a blueprint of what it takes to be an artist. If you're going to make it, you're going through a sea of nightmares to get to the top, to get out of the box. Whatever kind of artist you are, it takes that. If you want to be the kind of artist who can thrive off of it, who can feed your family with the kind of dreams that you would have if you were the child version of yourself, believing the very best that this thing is going to purchase you houses and land. You got to travel as the raven, as the blackbird. This was the first bird that Moses sent out of the ark. He didn't send the dove out first. He was sending the raven out to actually survey the land, because the raven deals with dispersion. See, this impure Venus that Brandon Lee was placed in, the perverse spirits were already there. These guys were celebrating Devil's Night, so this represented hell. They said, hey, this is Devil's Night. We want to light the city on fire. This was their goals. This is what they were about. They were representing the true chaotic forces. Untapped, unbridled, unbalanced, just wreaking havoc. Straight to the fiery furnace, right to the bottom of the universe. Lake Cocytus. Luciferus, all the way down in the bottom, right? You got to fly out of this, and it's going to is going to take also another form of shadow work, because you're trying to reconcile two lives, right? You know that if you don't get your fantasy life right alive, you can possibly die in your real life alive. You know what I mean? It's like if you don't chase your dream and succeed with your dream, you'll either be chasing the carrot for the rest of your life or die out. So it's very serious, this whole life and death portrayal, even though it's just a movie, and even though these things also come from different belief systems, all of these things point to stuff that is very real in our lives that happens each and every day, all around the clock. So you got to learn how to be the crow after you master the dragon. And remember, the dragon just has everything to do with working together. And now that we're all together, now we got to decide which way to go, where to steer. How do we navigate through each other's feelings, right? How do we make it within? How do we pull each other out from our world, our different experiences, and come together? How do we build? How do we connect? How does our stones become a spiritual castle together? Some are black stones, white stones, red stones, turquoise, you know what I mean? Amethyst, crystal, any kind of stone, that's any kind of stone, makes it into this framework. But how do we pull all of this together is the higher transmutations of the crow. When you see a bunch of crows together, they're not called a flock of birds like all other birds are called flocks. They're called a murder. The crow is also known as the eye of the oracle too, because it's there to send you visions, and that's the mythology surrounded around it. Also known as the raven, to communicate omens and visions of the future. A spirit animal, this bird is. So the crow, interestingly enough, is even higher than the dragon in its mythos. When you look at it on a 3D level, if the dragon were an actual creature that you could prove, and you put it up against the crow, of course the crow doesn't the crow doesn't stand a chance. A whole murder of crows wouldn't stand a chance against one dragon. But we're talking in a 9D, 10D, and 11D sense, though. Understanding that these animals just represent different paths and different structures and functions of society, of the human species, of nature. These are just signposts. It is dealing with both lives because both men died on the sets of both movies, I think. Or did Bruce Lee die in the other one at the end of Chinese Connection? I think that was where he was actually shot. But Brandon Lee, I think he died on set of this movie, The Crow. So these men died, demonstrating what we're talking about here. So I want to make sure that we can glean the power out of it, that perhaps these men were intending to communicate in hopes that the common people would receive it and really begin to embody it, because everything is a message. Everything is a message. So that's it in a nutshell on the crow. The particular path and the reason why they call it the black sun is because the eventual god of this realm, of that realm of the artist, is Abraxas. So you have the omnipotent, you have the path toward the God level through the artistry. This is why it's so important for the artist to be able to fly within, because the machine known as the industry will have you fly without. It's all about connecting with other people's feelings. You have to be cognizant of that as an artist, particularly musicians, vocalists, singers, rappers, particularly to that crowd. If you do a particular kind of music that's true to you, then you really want to stay independent. Maybe try to get your distribution on or something like that. You might want to go that way, because The machine has its own program of what it wants you to say, look like, present yourself as. It already has a script for you. You're giving up your likeness in exchange for this identity that they're going to give you. That's how that works. You'll be transmuted. You'll be stuck on the wrong side of Harpocrates. You know what I mean? If you and your fiance represent something else, you and your fiance could represent underground music. But you might sign to a label that wants you to be commercial. And you may not be able to make the change or make the leap if that's what you have to do. You might be a more lyrical person, but you may have to chop your words into thirds. You might have to use only a third as many words and still be clever. You might have to find ways to change your voice, change your style, change your beats. Now, if you haven't expressed this many sides of yourself, and if it's not your purpose to do so, then you're going to be like square peg, round hole, trying to fit into the machine. If these kind of steps are misnegotiated, you could end up perishing very quickly as an artist in a place like Arab Zarak. Most people just get drowned in the sea of their nightmares. The first time they might have got booed. The first time they might have fumbled some words. The first time the studio session didn't go well. The first time the album didn't do good or the mixtape didn't get any buzz. They probably gave up. They probably dropped it. The sea probably drowned them. The sea of what was first doubt, and then that doubt grew legs and built excuses around it. And it says, well, now not only do you not have the doubt, just the doubt, now you got life responsibilities in the way. When you first had this dream, it was before you had a family. But now that you allow doubt to pause you, and now that your kingdom or your fortune that was supposed to be built off this is not already in place by the time that you're starting to bring your family on the scene, now you're in the position as the crow where you got to flap and fly an even further distance to survey more land and to disperse more of the dark matters that go on in that realm. You'll have to fly even further to try to set things up later, because now you got other obstacles and other things to fly through. Now that tide rises even higher. So now you're a bird. You're not supposed to swim. The water's going to drown you. You're a crow. You're made to fly. But you notice there's the sea of nightmares there in the realm. So there's like a rising tide, and you gotta fly high and fly high fast. But up is within. So you have to go within very, very fast, because the sea of doubt and negativity, it can swallow you up very fast if you're a person who is very expressive. That is the ultimate message when you're going from the dragon to the crow. And it really means just to go from the collective to the individual. Now the crow is dealing with you. The dragon is dealing with us, but the crow is dealing with you. The crow is dealing with me. On the solo, who are you going to be as an individual when you fly within, out of your own sea of nightmares, and as the crow? What kind of song will you play? Where will you send your crow? Where will your crow go? So this is Super T Sigma again with Sigma Programming. I thank you for your time and attention. You already know reaching is teaching. And continue to vibrate high, people. Peace.